I don't know if you've noticed this. People seem really quick to take offense and really quick to become hostile now. This is a rather new phenomenon. And I really think a lot of that is they haven't resolved grief. And the last 4 years, we've all lost things. We've lost people, being shunned socially, or a lot of people have gotten laid off. And there's all these like little and big deaths that have happened. It's a lot. I think people think of grief only in the context of losing a loved one and like going to a wake and going to a funeral. And there's so many more things that we grieve and that we need to grieve. It's like a colonic for your soul. Grief is really stuff that needs to go. It needs to move, but you can't bypass it. You can't outsmart it. You can't do all these like little cute tricks. You got to walk into it, feel it, and then it chills out and it finds its own place. You integrate the parts of it that are good for you and you kind of release the rest of it as a detox.
Welcome back to the Awakening Her podcast. In this episode, I am sitting down with the skeptical shaman, Rachel White. Rachel and I have an in-depth and potent conversation where she shares all about grief, healing, and moving forward. Rachel also shares about the Lunar New Year on January 29th and how we can make the most of this upcoming year, supported by the wood snake in Chinese Zodiac. Rachel is known as the skeptical shaman and is making waves as an unusual spiritual practitioner. Rachel is a podcast host, owner of multiple companies, and way shower for seekers on the path. I know you're going to love this conversation and how Rachel shares about how we can recognize, process, and move through the different forms of grief, especially moving into this brand new year. So without further ado, let's just dive into this episode. There's going to be so much here to take away. I know you're going to love it. So let's welcome Rachel onto the show. Hello, Rachel. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well today. I am slowing down in my way, which my husband jokes looks like a normal person's work day. I'm in recovery. I was in corporate America for 23 years and I grew up, poor and very unstable, like home environment. So my new hat trick is taking Decembers off of client-facing work. I have a shamanic practice called TOTEM Readings. So I do psychic one-on-ones, and I also have coaching and mentoring work that I do one-on-one, and I just take the whole month off. And I joked with you before we hit record that I schedule my nervous breakdown every year. And this year's theme, which surprised me, and it shouldn't, is grief. And I know that you've recently talked to some other folks about this, but I think it's crucial because we're heading into a new Chinese New Year, January 30th of 2025. We welcome the wood snake. And wood snake brings with it ghosts, and not just literal ghosts. I'm a medium, but ghosts of self, hungry ghosts and hauntings and grief and release and surrender, and that shedding, the snake really shedding its skin. So I'm trying to do my homework a little early so it doesn't sneak up on me. We'll see how that goes.
I love that you give yourself, it's probably is a nervous breakdown, but that spaciousness. And we talk about that here on the show, how space is synonymous with source. Space is healing. Space is where we actually get to recalibrate, whether you want to look at it nervous system or tap into creativity, honor the inner unit, healing, shedding, releasing. Like none of it can happen when we're jammed up, whether it's appointments or to-dos or just never taking a break from that hustle. And I love that you do that. I do something so similar in my business where I'm like, I know I'm offering this, and everything else is like just me nurturing me going on walks, maybe creative stuff I want to do, but I just take that pressure off. It's like a sacred pause. It's such an important thing to do. And yeah, a lot comes up in that space. Do you think that jumping right into it, no foreplay here today. Why do you think people avoid space? I just want to say that, whether it's in your business, in your life.
Yeah. And I wrote about this today on Substack. And one of them, and this is really important to note, is our society doesn't benefit from people giving themselves space. The way our society is structured is it benefits from us when we are consuming or producing at maximum capacity. So constant yang, perpetual summer, on and on and on and on, right? And so there's an incentive socially, financially, economically, other ways to not facilitate that. And then the personal accountability piece, the individual piece, is we are, maybe it's nurture, maybe it's part nature, monkey brain and being raised and inculcated in this. We are very uncomfortable sitting in silence doing nothing. The state of being while not doing is incredibly uncomfortable for almost, it is for me, even though, I meditate every day. I have a variety of tools and practices. I've been in very good therapy, by the way, too. That can be useful as well. It's not just the woo, but it's like, it's still, I joke with my husband that I get the bends every winter. When you go scuba diving and you're not supposed to come up to the surface too fast because of the pressure, because you can get the bends and you can get, weird vertigo and all these other symptoms. And there's an energetic, emotional version of that where I have no idea until I slow down how much of the last 11 months were pure momentum, right? And burst working, doing a marathon at a sprint pace. And that's because, with inflation, being in a woo-based business, things are tight. So you have to work your ass off. I miss corporate America once a week where I'm like, that was easier. That was a lot easier than this shit.
Once a week.
Yeah. And also when it's your own baby, if you're wired at all like me, giving yourself a minute is hard. I'm the hardest boss I've ever had. I'm the biggest dickhead I've ever worked for. So I'm working on that. So there's the social thing and the personal thing. And grief kind of slaps hard. So when it comes to the party, and usually like day 2 or 3 of you really relaxing, slowing down, if you're doing a real practice of digital detox, silence, surrender, it's going to come knocking. And the first wave of it usually feels like anger or betrayal, and weird things will trigger you. And you're like, why am I reacting this way? And it's like, knock, knock, knock. There's probably some unresolved grief behind that. And I think one of the reasons, I don't know if you've noticed this, I've noticed it, many of my clients and friends have noticed it. People seem really quick to take offense and really quick to become hostile now in a way that it just wasn't the case even 3 years ago. This is a rather new phenomenon. And I really think a lot of that is they haven't resolved grief. And the last 4 years, we've all lost things. We've lost people, whether to death or to, being shunned socially or being moved sent into exile from a community or a profession or an industry or a job. A lot of people have gotten laid off a lot and have had to find new jobs, new coworkers. And there's all these like little and big deaths that have happened. And it's a lot. And I think you had mentioned, I think people think of grief only in the context of losing a loved one and like going to a wake and going to a funeral. And there's so many more things that we grieve and that we need to grieve, because it's like my husband asked me about, I made a flower essence called Good Grief because I'm a smart ass, and it has goth black bottles. It's all murdered out and it looks sad, which I think is very funny. And he said, what is this thing with grief? I was like, it's like a colonic for your soul. Grief is really stuff that needs to go. It needs to move, but you can't bypass it. You can't outsmart it. You can't do all these like little cute tricks. You got to walk into it, feel it, and then it chills out and it finds its own place. You integrate the parts of it that are good for you and you kind of release the rest of it as a detox. And I wish people would look at it just more pragmatically that way too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. There's so many things in that. I find that being a channel, a lot of my stuff comes through my team of light. They say things way better than I can. And sometimes it's like, I see these truths of like, we think that the end is wrong. And even as you were speaking, I was just receiving how time, for the sake of this conversation, we'll say time with quotes for all you, time and space is like happening. Like we're moving along this timeline, and grief is almost like our humanness not being able to manage the fact that shit moves on, stuff ends. So whether it's perceived as good, perceived as bad, we've all been in a time when we move and it's a good move. We're moving to a bigger house, fancier shit. But as we're leaving, we're going, oh, our little street and our little this, because there's always this ending, and grief is almost a word for like shit's moving on, and our nervous system needs to adjust. Our mind needs to adjust. It's not a bad and a wrong, even if it is heartbreaking, because it is a human. I love the way that you're saying this, because we lose, we gain, we this, we that. It's always moving. And grief is almost like a state of resistance in a way, like holding on to what was. And I'm not saying that like for someone grieving that feels sad they lost someone, we have to feel our feelings, we have to go through that. But it's interesting. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And, one big thing with all of this is you can logically understand that you're grieving, or logically understand why you moved, why you changed jobs, why you left a friendship. Like you can get that, you can have surface level emotions about it too. But there is, I think, a deeper, almost in your energetic fascia, like spiritual shamanic component to grief that's utterly irrational, that operates in the subconscious, that the only way you're going to get down there into those deeper tissues, if you will, is giving it a lot of time and space and silence. And it comes. And it comes in ways and in images, maybe it's a dream or something that comes up in a meditation, or just, I don't know if you've ever had like a somatic release of grief. It's fucking wild. And it's like, oh, so grief got stored in fat in my like glutes, but it does. And it needs to come to the surface, and allowing that, it's the only thing that's going to let you really move forward not in like a brand new way where you never existed before. But I know you've been talking about rebirth on your show. There is a Control Alt Delete to allowing yourself to actually get down into the crevasse and grieve something and feel it. It's like shaking an Etch-a-Sketch. Have you ever done psychedelics?
Yeah, I mean, no, Mom, not at all.
Yeah, no DEA. I have clients who work for the DEA. Wink.
Any police? I have nothing to do with that.
Yeah, police. But, I did them the other day, and they had a bit of a tail on them in a way that I wasn't expecting. It's just mushrooms. And I'm very, I've just always had a high tolerance for all those things. They don't titillate me the way they do other people. I really use them as a medicine to reset my nervous system and my adrenal system. And I came inside because I had to do a podcast at 2:00 in the afternoon. I was like, I'm still like the struggle bus right now. And my husband was like, he set a little alarm on his phone, like, come get me. And I was going to have to bathe and like brush my hair and attempt to put makeup on. And I was like, I'm going to look like a Picasso. This is going to be, now I know how Wendy Williams feels. Like I needed to be managed. And I got out of the bath and I was doing okay. And I looked at my makeup, right? And I was like, I don't know how to use any of it. Like true tabula rasa, like you really, and I joked with my husband, I said, just, this is negative right now. It's going to be fine though. And everything worked out fine. But this is what it does to your anxiety. This is what it does to grief, is it resets you, right? And there's ways to get there without psychedelics. I wrote on Substack today about some of the things that I do, even though it's uncomfortable, instead of just sitting and being like, okay, I'm going to feel sad now. Like you're naturally going to have resistance to that. So in these winter months, trying yin yoga, right? And doing it maybe alone, maybe not going to a group class. I used to teach yin yoga. Every class, we did candlelight in the evening. People would cry. Sometimes they would know why. Sometimes they had no idea. And they're like, it's just, I was like, let it come out. Better out than in. And so I light candles. I use a little aromatherapy and I just pull up YouTube. I've got some saved yin yoga classes from people that I thought do a good job. And, grief we're in the season of grief. That's what winter is in Chinese medicine and in yoga. And that's tied to the kidneys. And, when you do yin yoga, you're on your back a lot. You're gently stimulating these guys. You could do happy baby and roll back and forth on your lower back. And yin yoga, you can wear a sweater. You can use props. You can be warm. You can do all these appropriate, things energetically and in herbalism, right? Whether it's Ayurveda or Chinese medicine for this season, and comfort yourself. So that's a way, it's a trick for me to feel like I'm doing something, like it's a project which appeals to my monkey brain that's been inculcated in our society. But each pose is 10 minutes, man. It's just you and you. You know what I mean? That's a big one. And then being a shaman, this season, every time I slow down and I do just one shamanic journey meditation, which the main piece of that is just listening to a drumming music. that stimulates a theta wave state in the brain. Like a lucid dream, it's not as woo as it sounds. It's actually like science. That'll always stimulate what we call soul part recollection experiences. So I'll have dreams about rescuing an animal, or me when I'm a kid, or some part of me, soul part that was traumatized, cleaved off, or went dormant, and integrating that back into self. And those come with a lot of emotional releases. I joke that those dreams and those meditations turn me into a big pussy for about a month. Everyone I interact with, I'm just like, oh my God, you're just a human being. Like I started crying. I got a burrito delivered one day, and I called up Grubhub. I was like, you have to give her a big tip. And they gave her like a special $100 gift card or something. And I said, she's delivering burritos on Christmas Eve, man. And just everything, like, it becomes very poignant. And that's how, a big part of you has come back online, right? And you're feeling more. It increases your extrasensory perception, your sensory perception, but also your emotional perception for a while. Takes a minute before that evens out. So those are things that anybody can do. There's really good shamanic journeying, drumming music on Apple, on Spotify, all over the place. Just pick something you like and lay on the floor. That's the other thing I like about shamanic journeying. I've never enjoyed seated meditation. I just want to go away. I get so distracted by tactile things too. It's a touch of the tism where I'm like, I'll feel like my pants, or I'm like, am I slouching? What am I doing with my hands? If I could just lay down, solves a lot. Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like, sometimes meditation is just best starfishing on your bed. Like, it doesn't have to be this big monk experience where you're sitting there all day and you have no thoughts. I can't even tell you the relief. I'm sure you find that all the time when you say, like, you don't have to have no thoughts in order to meditate. People are like, oh, what?
Journeying, I tell them, if transcendental meditation or Buddhist meditation is no mind, shamanic journeying is all the mind. You're really encouraging your mind to just go and play and not judge it and not constrict and just allow. And that aligns a lot with like the grief thing, because it really is just a matter of unclenching your perineum and your jaw and allowing. That's when we tend to get sucked with feelings. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why, like, I have a PTSD diagnosis. I didn't get it in the military. No stolen valor here. I got it from other shit. But I talk a lot to guys who've been in the military and who saw combat. And they'll also, because, we all have the same, they always correct me. It's not PTSD, it's PTS, because it's not a disorder. And I'm like, okay, guys, it is in my life. I'm disordered. But congratulations to all of you. But they don't feel any of it until they get to safety. So PTSD does not show up at all when you are in the shit, when you're under fire, when you're surviving. And there's a long window, even after they come back, before it sneaks up on them. And it's when they're sitting in the backyard, starting a grill, getting ready to cook dinner. And it just comes like a tsunami breaks through a seawall. And a lot of it is really rooted in grief. And that's one of the primary reasons I think psychedelic therapy, but also shamanic journeying meditation for them works, because you're seeing things and you're feeling things, but you're not re-traumatizing yourself. It gives you a strange objective distance. I don't know if you've ever talked to people who had PTSD from war, who did like Ibogaine, but they'll see scenes of horrible things that happen, but they're not panicking. So they can kind of get all the way through it. And then there's crying and they feel relief, and then they feel joy. And everything's different.
It's incredible how, we're all waking up collectively to this awareness that, like, well, first of all, I think our parents, their parents' generation, like, feelings, you shove that shit down, put it in a box. Girls don't cry, boys don't cry, nobody cries, get over it, kind of thing.
But we're nothing but emotions all the time. They had the opposite problem.
Yeah. Right. Right. But we are coming to this place where we realize that, first of all, no emotion is wrong or bad. That's something that has become very present to me, just learning this experience of coexisting a soul and a human and how we make the most of this. Like, we are meant to experience all of them. It's like a palette, and we will forever. But it's fascinating how when they come up, and through this conversation and, through what you're saying, it's like when it comes up, it's there for a reason. It's there to help clear you out. It's there to help you process. And in that space, I think a lot of people are scared. I've definitely heard clients say the words like, I'm terrified what will come up if I give myself time to slow down, or a meditation, a deep meditation or something. But how it really is feel it to heal it, even though it rhymes and it sounds cheesy. It's in the experience of it that we do get to heal it. And something I've learned lately that just put it in my head, it made more sense, that when these traumas happen or when this grief is happening, like we can't process it very well or at all. We just don't have the tools. It's too much. So then as it comes up in a
to not process it, it's adaptive to not process it in the moment because you're in the middle of something.
Right.
So your system's looking out for you. It's not all bad.
No,
it's saying we'll do that later, snooze button, because I need to be super engaged right now. Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes up later, it's an opportunity for healing. And it's this portal of like here, also with manifestation and self-growth and transformation, like we're asking for more. Everybody listening is asking for more peace, more fulfillment, more joy, more money, more health. So it's really our inner being, the beautiful Tao as it is, the world that we experience, this life force, giving us, showing us what is within us that needs to be integrated, seen, felt. And in that spaciousness, that is where it is done. It's not done while you're at the gym. Usually, sometimes I sob after a good workout, that's for sure. But it's not done when we're just always busy. And so it might feel like I gave myself space and I was just freaking sad all weekend, but good. Like I would say, good, feel those emotions. It's having the tools maybe to navigate through them. Is that how you see it too? Or what do you want to add to that?
That fear that your clients brought up is rational. So I just want to say that, like, if you're afraid of what's going to come up, that's a rational concern, right? Because it's going to be intense or intimidating, but it's in there. It coming up isn't making it any more or less real. It's real. It's with you all the time. And it comes up in ways that you're just not aware of consciously, and you're not being intentional about it. So it's kind of like, what do you want? Because, it's got you coming and it's got you going. You might as well dig in and do it. And the other thing I would say about all of that, and to your point about the space and the void, in feng shui, as an example, when we do feng shui work in a home, one of the key reasons we clear clutter, and they call it the emperor's robes. If you walk around your home or your yard, if you had long flowing robes of an emperor, would it get stuck on things? And that's a way to visualize chi moving. If you want to manifest something, you have to create space for it in your home. If you clear out a bunch of shit that you don't use anymore, guess what's going to happen? A bunch of good things are coming in. I've done this experiment intentionally. It's bananas how well it works. And if you think of the bandwidth that gets eaten up by grief in your energy body and your emotional body and how much space it's taking up, it's boxes and boxes of old crap from your childhood home, visualizing it that way. So you got to get in there, you got to go through those boxes and get rid of it, because there's good stuff wanting to come in and you don't have space for it.
Yeah, that's huge. And that right there feels like a lot of the message that's coming forward about 2025 and sort of this upcoming segment in our collective energy. And I'd love to hear you talk about that, about like the wood snake and about just the energy that's to come, and how as seekers, we are being asked, more than ever in some ways, being squeezed, being tested, all this stuff, because we're asking for that. We're being encouraged to release and rebirth and purify and refine and all that stuff. So I'd love to hear you talk about just your perception on what's coming up for us energetically and how we can make the most of it.
So wood snake is interesting because it's wood element, just like wood dragon year in 2024 is wood element. It's more manageable, actually. So if the wood dragon year was a redwood that sprang up out of nowhere and became taller than a 5-story building, wood snake year is a fig tree or an olive tree. So it's more rooted, it goes more lateral, and it produces
Thank God.
Yes. And we all have change fatigue at this point. But as a part of that, it's more, more manageable, more sustainable, quiet, a little bit of a quieter energy. It has a little tiny bit of the fire element in it, because the next year is going to be a fire horse year. So that little bit, if you imagine that little bit of fire element as a candle, a small votive candle or something, we're going to have to take care of that and nurture it. And it's not very reliable either. One gust of wind can come in and move that. And that's the little bit of the fire element is what's bringing up the issues of release, surrender, molting. So this has been 2024 Wood Dragon year, transformation, revolutions, mass change on this planet and rapid growth. Wood snake year is the year of processing that and stabilizing the energy body and the physical body, stabilizing your business, stabilizing society, stabilizing relationships, trying to get the tree nourished so it bears fruit instead of just growing for the sake of it. Like trying to bring things back here a little bit, keep that little candle burning. And also, Chinese astrology is very superstitious. They're funny. If you ever follow like a feng shui person on Instagram, they're from Hong Kong or whatever. It's just a very different energy. There's zero toxic positivity. They're just going to yell at you. I follow this great woman and she goes, because right now we're in double wood because the wood snake energy is kind of coming in already. And she goes, 2 woods, rest, go nowhere. All you do is work, no play, no family, no nothing. And that I just died laughing. I love her so much. For whatever reason, it brings me so much joy to listen to her. Just tell people that their dreams are going to get crushed by the energies right now. But this is also like they have a big superstition about this year and some of what they call the flying stars and being, stars of death, grief, illness, confronting betrayal, difficult data. Anyone out there who reads tarot cards, very 3 of Swords, right? And the only way to navigate that is to surrender. If you double down in a wood snake year on self-will, you think you're in control, you think you can outsmart it, you think you can use deception or force or whatever it is to get your way, you're going to be in trouble. And if you surrender and you allow, because snakes don't consciously shed, they molt as a part of a natural cycle, and they have to slow down. They don't eat a lot. They become very lethargic. We're also going to have to manage those undulations and allow things. And I think difficult information is going to continue to come out just in the world, right? And we're going to have to bear witness to some things that are going to trigger grief, maybe cause new grief, and realizing like we're not in charge anymore and we have to slow down and we have to surrender a little bit. It doesn't mean you sign up for nonsense or you become a part of the problem, but realizing like what your sphere of control is and what your role in this is. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so powerful. I love how you said too about like the evening out. Like we've all been so disheveled this year, whether it's even been like big success or big brave movements, or it's been, feeling really chaotic. There's a settling in that needs to happen, which also makes sense why collectively, as you were talking, I was like, oh, that's why also collectively we've been talking a lot more about nervous system. Like it's becoming much more normal to talk about nervous system regulation and different techniques and safety in the body, it's like, oh yeah, right. Cause we're going to really need that in this upcoming segment is like, really, I feel like grounding down, integrating, settling into like what we've created or what we think we've created. And some things in that I'm just seeing might actually fall off because there's this tizzy of like building all this stuff. But when it all settles, you're like, okay, still some more things may need to go, may not be quite right. But it's that really, I don't know, the strong roots maybe or something settling into our foundations.
Wood snake years are going to give us tools for exactly what you just said. So we're not alone. We're not up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. We have a paddle. And wood snake years are excellent for herbalism, naturopathy, alternative healing modalities. So things like, I'm trained in European herbalism, but Chinese medicine, acupuncture, massage, cupping, Ayurvedic medicine, regenerative farming and agriculture is going to have a huge renaissance this coming year is one of my little predictions, and a focus on like backyard gardening, which, I grow my flower essence plants out there, but we also have chickens. I'm composting. I'm studying Korean natural farming, where you ferment a bunch of microbes, you put them in the soil. It's sort of like probiotics for your own backyard. And, the ley lines of the earth are waking up in a snake year too. And that means things like, the earth itself, the earth grid is going to be healing. It's going to be offering help. There's, going to be an awakening of nature spirits, fairies, what's called genus loci, spirits of place, like trees, mountains. You're going to get health benefits and restorative rebalancing benefits from all of these things. And I think that might be part of why the undulations are still going to be there a little bit, because you and I were chatting right before we hit record. There's alternative healing and even just things like supplementation and whole foods, or talking about organic foods or whatever. People get really triggered. It's a real third rail, which is bizarre to me, because it's like my grandparents canned their own food and they weren't crunchy hippies. They weren't like evil hippies out trying to dose you with LSD. They just lived through the Depression and they like gardening. Like none of this is malevolent. And so I think part of what we're going to have to deal with, so the dragon year is much more like shouting objective truth, just saying how you feel, telling people to F off. Snake year, we have to be a little bit more diplomatic and patient with ourselves and with others. And I think that's going to be part of that mixture of people being like, what are you talking about? What's a ley line? And it's like, dude, people in China have been talking about ley lines for 20,000 years.
Yeah.
It's as old as humans walking upright. This is like a real
so much
thing.
Like new age shit that's actually the most ancient shit that the people call new age. It's like acupuncture's new age. I'm like, that could not be less new age.
It's the oldest of all medicines, and that's what's coming back.
Right.
And also, though, I think that might be part of the grief, is people realizing like they kind of got bamboozled. What's in my cereal? What is this red dye? Why is it illegal to put it in food in Europe? And that confronting of data where you're like, oh man, what? My lotions got chemicals that cause cancer. Like, what is going on? And managing your way through that, there is a grief to that too. And I've been through my own journey with that, where I'm like, wait, I have to make my own like moisturizer now. I don't really have a hippie bone in my body, by the way. If I could buy things and just make it easy, I would. But it's like not good for you. Yeah. And the more I make my own stuff and the more dialed in and educated I get, the healthier I get. I've never been to a doctor less, and I've never felt better in my life. And I'm getting old. Okay. It shouldn't be going this way. It's crazy. So it's going to be a really dynamic, interesting year. And I think, before we hit the ground running on January 30th, our homework assignment, should we choose to accept it, mission impossible over this holiday season, is to detox as much as we can, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, from the chaos the last 4 years. And really let that go so that we can receive the good things that are coming our way. The new tree, the wood snake year tree, bears fruit. There will be abundance. We may also change our financial system. Our currency might change, but it's not going to take abundance away. And there's so many new things that we can build, but we're going to have to build them. We're going to have to be patient too. Yeah.
I love that you're talking about this. It's like, it feels really earthy. Like obviously wood would be earthy, but it just feels like this come back home, come back to yourself. Even the detox, I'm seeing like less social media, less influence. If anyone still listens to the news, cut that shit out. No, I'm just kidding. But this detox.
It's not good for you.
No, it's this detox of fear, of comparison, of stimulation, of chemicals, of this, of that. And as you said, it was looked at as so crunchy, like, just you'd what? And even I started out in nutrition. I started teaching intuitive eating and spiritual nutrition, saying that food has frequency and food has medicine. And one day I realized from my team, it was this huge breakthrough. Some of my clients were like, yeah, what? But spirit showed me how like medicine is in food, right? Frequency, but energetic frequency. But humans have to like quantify things and call it stuff. So we call it like vitamin D, vitamin B. I'm like, it's codes of healing frequencies that we call vitamins. But there's this deepening of just understanding that the earth has this medicine, the grounding, like we can go outside and ground. We know that. Like, why are we not thinking about this type of stuff as medicine? We just think, oh, I should go ground and something else in the should pile, right? But the earth has something to teach you. That tree has something to teach you. Even cannabis, and like there's so many things that people are realizing there's benefit in this stuff. It's not all or nothing. It's not crunchy. It's like, come back home. The earth has so much medicine for you. And even in that spaciousness, come home to who you truly are, to your spirit, to your life force energy. And something I just wanted to say about space, I heard someone recently on a podcast, no remembrance of who it was, but they said, when your brain doesn't have stimulation for a second, meaning like we're not just quickly picking up our phone, quickly focusing here, we start to think new thoughts. And there was like this ripple of like, yes, we even think new thoughts when we give ourselves a frickin' second instead of quickly going and scrolling here, quickly, stimulating ourselves. So space is where you'll think new thoughts, you'll feel new things, you'll make new connections in your brain, you'll feel your intuition, your whatever you want to call that, your soul. It's just like, it's so needed in this time. And as you're saying with grief, it's like, it's just so what's needed to process and integrate this.
I'm so happy you said that. So one of the points of my grief, one of the origin points of the grief that I've felt for 4 years is how flattened people have become because of social media and this obsession with politics and ideologies, because they're boring and they all say the same things. And I mean, yeah, they're different teams or whatever, but I miss, and I've had deep, profound personal sadness missing people having original thoughts and telling them to me. I've been starved for good art, good theater, real culture, conversations with people that, it's not like I don't know interesting people. I do, trust me. And I host a podcast and you're interesting and whatever. But like, I felt like instead of having personalities or original thoughts, what you just said, these spontaneous things that come from the muse or your genius, these terms the ancient world had for the sources of inspiration. You're a channel, so you get them. They, instead of having a personality that way, like an organic bubbling up, they developed an identity. And a lot of these identities are based around mental illness and suffering. And by the way, I have been abused. I was abused as a child. I was abused as an adult. I had to leave a very dangerous situation. Like, I get it, but it's also the least interesting thing about me. It just is. And it just felt flat and sad and monotone and very like Werner Herzog. He's this German film director where he's like, everything is sad and beige and sad. And I'm hoping that in the wood snake year, we can get a little bit more novelty from ourselves and each other and the world, and a little bit more color. And snakes are like, people born in snake years are generally beautiful and very elegant, by the way. And so there's an aesthetic emphasis in a wood snake year of, we may see a renaissance in art, in architecture, in, all these things that elevate the spirit, that inspire us, that facilitate those original thoughts. Right. And I think it's enough isolation. It's enough of like clenching and trying to get through. And we're all going to start doing the human thing again. Instead of just surviving it, we're going to focus a little bit more on thriving. And I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I really hear you. Thank you for sharing that, because I find that too, like with phones and technology and social media, there's things that are happening that I find like I until this moment haven't really thought of it as grief. So thank you very much. Because it is like, I miss people sitting around without two-thirds of them being distracted by a phone. I wish people wouldn't take so many pictures when we're enjoying a present moment and then tag you on Instagram. Like, I miss when we could be sitting around and go like, oh, what was that again? That painting that we saw, and like without someone just going and looking it up and being like, oh, it was this. And we're all, oh, like these dynamics in differences. I notice the older generation, like now that they've gotten a phone and realize a smartphone or whatever, now it's like, oh, did you see on Facebook this and this? And oh, did you see? And sometimes I just get this feeling of like, I witness when I'm talking to someone, I'm in the kitchen, maybe talking to a friend, and I'm talking and they stop replying and I look back and fuck, they're on their phone. I lost them. Like there's this stuff that I really go like, well, I guess from now on, like I look around at a restaurant and people are on their phones. People give their kids a tablet to wait for their chicken strips to come. Like, are you fucking kidding? Sometimes getting a little feisty.
Atrophy because of it, because we rely on this thing. And this guy I used to work with, and he's, in marketing, wrote on LinkedIn, he goes, anyone else noticing your writing, like the quality of your writing and your ideas atrophying with the use of ChatGPT and being a perennial smartass? And he wasn't that great before ChatGPT, by the way, between you and I. Side note, I immediately react. I said, yeah, it's a perishable thinking, writing, art, whatever these things are, they're perishable skills. If you don't use it, you lose it. And we've all lost it. And it's not just like that individual losing whatever that they had before an atrophy. I lose it too. I lose the benefit of them being sharp and interesting and writing well. That contributes to the social fabric. It enriches all of us. And I'm seeing signs here and there that it's coming back. Art's coming back. Culture's coming back. As someone who loves writing, good writing is coming back. You can tell when a Netflix movie was written by AI. You can actually tell. It's empty, it's hollow, it's tinny. It should work because there's good actors in it, but it doesn't. There's something missing. And the thing missing is called humanity, by the way. It's our spiritual essence. It's creativity. It's our connection to the sublime, the divine, the gods, those archetypes, whatever you want to call them. And I'm looking forward to that coming back in a major way because it's been a huge bummer for me. And living in Chicago during COVID lockdowns, I couldn't go to Steppenwolf Theater. I couldn't go to the art museum. I couldn't go to these things that, I grew up poor, but I those were things in my life since childhood, basically, give or take, the lyric opera, whatever it was. And I didn't realize until they were gone what they did for me. I used to go to the art museum every Friday. I'd walk, I lived like 10, 15 minutes away from it, this world famous art museum. And I'd go look at paintings and sip a glass of champagne and walk around. And when that was gone, it seems silly because it's like, well, but aren't you this, that, and the other, and a disease? And I was like, I would honestly at this stage, 8 months in, send me into the museum because something else in me is dying. And it really forced me to do some examinations of, it's not just food, oxygen, and a bed and protection from the elements that I need. There's something else in me that needs other things, or I really go in a bad direction.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of what humans kind of call your core values. And I see this as like a blueprint of what really fulfills us. And I talk to my clients sometimes about like this life force energy. And we start out, what gives you energy? And the obvious answers, like you said, food, rest, water, whatever, right? Sugar, whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, but beyond that. And there's this life force energy that gets spooled up when you're doing something you love, when you're engaged in your senses, when you're in the present moment on the razor's edge, right here, enjoying art, food, laughter, hugs with friends, love making, whatever it is, like being in it, not being on the outside of it or being at home looking at, pictures of it on Instagram. Like it's just not the same. Even on your phone, looking at pictures of that thing you did 2 years ago, it's not the same as being there and experiencing it. And I think we are hungry for connection and experience and less like digital, less Zoom, less this, less that, more real. Get out in nature, connect with somebody you love, meet somebody new, take a pottery class, like, learn about birds.
And actually cook.
Right.
Even if it's bad, even if you mess it up, get some candles, get some flowers, have like an experience with other people that's real and that's dynamic. And I would highly recommend you not allow phones at the table, honestly, because it'll be way more interesting. And one of the things we love about living in Austin now is we go all the time to see live comedy here. Basically, every great living comedian lives here now, performs any night of the week, small places, $20, $30 tickets. It's not a whole big thing. And they lock your phone up in a Yonder bag so you can't record them and take them out of context and get them in trouble. And also so you can just be present. It's art. It's punk rock, really. And so I have a client and friend coming to visit later in December. And another one of my clients and friends and I, we're all going to go to the Comedy Mothership and see just a comedy show. And it's a comedian they haven't heard of. I've never seen him live. And we're going to go, the three of us, and sit there and allow like this alchemical magic to happen and see how it changes us. And I love comedy too, because it's rude and offensive and you will get triggered, right? You will. And you might feel sad or weird or get kind of angry. You'll see people react to comedians all the time. They have to get removed. Yeah. And that's like good for you. That's medicine. That's like a cytotoxic substance that stimulates an immune response. But instead of immune response, it's like your own creativity, your self-awareness or personal development that happens. And, being part Lakota Sioux and a shaman, it's that sacred clown thing of like showing you how insane your self-will is, and getting you to question the nature of your reality. And, good comedians subvert the audience. They get you to laugh at things that are dark or bad that you don't agree with, but it's funny. And seeing something through the looking glass like that, I think, is really good for you. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to more art and culture in the wood snake year. It's enough of this rocket ships and screaming at each other and world change. I think we could use a night at the opera, or, a lunch at the art museum.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. It reminds me too, just even in business, it's more important to be authentic and be real. And some people are just not going to like it. Some people will, than to try to be a cookie cutter version of somebody else, or, your way to health. It's like, it's not looking around going, what plan do I follow? It's finding your way to what feels the best in your body. And so when it comes to moving forward and feeling better in your life, it's this real path of real substance. There's no out there magic formula. It's like, go, see some art, watch a comedy show, like be with people, enjoy food. Don't worry about carbs so much. Just enjoy your life, But yeah, I love this conversation so much. This has been so good. What are any final words, anything left unsaid? We went to all corners here in this conversation. It's so good. And moving into this, this wood snake year, everything that's to come, is there anything else you want to say for everybody listening?
Whether you want to grieve, whether you want to get into adrenal recovery, whether you want to get ready for the wood snake year, it's all the same homework, I would say. And it's be gentle with yourself, but like not fake gentle, for real gentle. Stop going full yang. One of the herbs that I use a lot this time of the year is rose, because I'm in Ayurveda too. I'm a pitta. I'm very fiery. So I like going. I like drinking alcohol. I like eating spicy food. I'm addicted to my own dosha, my own imbalance. So cooling foods, oilier foods, warm, nourishing, like stewed apples, things that are warm instead of cold. And bringing rose in, either as aromatherapy, a flower essence, or just putting some dried rose in an herbal tea. It's fully digestible, edible flower, and it's crazy good for your nervous system. And there's something soft about rose, right? So like anybody can do this. If you see roses for sale at the grocery store, something, get them, put them in a vase. Their message is always like, you're going to be okay. Take it easy. You don't need to go so hard. And I just think they're a really good energetic embodiment. Like their vibration is that pure yin of like, you can be and not do. It's okay. Yeah.
Be and not do. I love that. And that's the question of our society, is like, what do I do? It's like, be. Well, how do I do that? And how long is it going to take? And are there snacks? And do I have a map? And
pumped on the wood snake here. I've taken the white pill. I really have. And I'm not a natural cockeyed optimist. So I'm pumped for it. Yeah.
You're skeptical after all. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where can we find you? Where's the best place to find you? Where do you hang out? What do you offer? How can we work with you? All the things.
Best place is TOTEMReadings.com. That's my website. Totem, like a totem pole, TOTEM. My email's on there. You could submit a form. You could book sessions, all that good stuff. So that's the best place to find me. I'm on Instagram passive aggressively. So I post and I ghost. If you message me on there, it doesn't work because I don't conduct business on there. So email me. And I have a Substack. It's TOTEM Readings is the name of it. Same as my business. And the Skeptical Shaman podcast. And the new season of the podcast is coming out in January, and our big focus is on just dropping the pretense. No more walking on eggshells. Just say what you think. You don't have to be aggressive and rude, but let's all just unclench, because I really think we need to, if we're going to move through this little membrane into the new earth, kind of. We just need to cut the crap a little bit. So interviewed some cult survivors, some interesting folks. I stayed up very late last night interviewing a ritual magician, quite famous. He was in the Hellier series on Amazon, if anyone's familiar with that. So I'm pumped for it. Yeah.
Cool. That is so awesome. I'm going to put all the links below. Thank you so much for sharing everything that came through today. I love your tone. I love your vibe. It's good to be skeptical. It's good to be real with this stuff, because we've heard a lot of woo, and now we're looking for like, how do we actually integrate this into our life? How do we actually live this? And you're such a perfect voice for that, to just cut through. It's refreshing, makes sense. I deem you legit. Thank you.
Thank you. I like things that just work. And sometimes they're just simple, ancient things. Doesn't mean they're easy, but they're simple. It's like it's not that deep all the time.
Love that.
I say to myself every day.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode on the Awakening Her podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and my guest. And if you did, we would love to hear from you. Come find us on Instagram. All the links are below in the show notes. Take a screenshot that you're listening to this episode, sharing your takeaways or your enthusiasm for the show. Tag us both over on Instagram. And if you do that, I will send you a free gift. I really do hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I will see you in the next episode.